Hey class! In this video, we are going to be talking about the next few lessons that you will be covering in science. We will be talking about animal life cycles. So what I'm going to do in this video is just give you a little bit of an overview of life cycles and why are they so important? What do we need to know about them? So over the next 3 days, you're going to be taking a look at the life cycles of 3 different animals. You're going to be looking at the life cycle of a butterfly. You're going to look at the life cycle of a frog. And then finally, you're going to look at the life cycle of a bobcat. And these are all in your science book. So you'll be reading these lessons over the next few days. But what I wanted to do today is just talk about what is a life cycle. That should sound familiar to you because we did talk about life cycles when we talked about plants. Remember that a plant starts as a seed and then it germinates into a smaller plant and finally it's a full-grown adult plant. Did that seed, did that plant look the same the entire way as it was growing and changing? No, it looked different. And in the same way, a lot of times animals look different too when they go through their life cycles. So for example, the first animal you're going to be studying is a butterfly. Now, a butterfly, the first stage of its life cycle, it's in an egg. Does an egg look anything like an adult butterfly? No. First, it goes from an egg. The next stage it moves to is called a larva, where it looks kind of like a worm or a caterpillar. Next, it goes to a pupa, where it's in its chrysalis. And finally, when it breaks out of that chrysalis, it becomes a butterfly. And that's something important, and that tells us something important, and that tells us that animals a lot of times look very different at different stages in their life cycles. They grow and they change. The next animal that you're going to be studying is a frog. And in the same way, a frog, when it's in its first life cycle stage, when it's in its egg, does not look like a full-grown frog. It goes from an egg to a tadpole. Finally, it becomes a larger tadpole, and then it's a full-grown adult frog. And you're going to be watching videos and taking a look at pictures in your book. And I want you to really notice how different animals look sometimes when they go through their life cycles. However, not every single animal goes through a metamorphosis, a complete change of their body. Mammals often do not. If you've ever had a puppy or a kitten, you know that a lot of times when a kitten is born, it looks just like it will as an adult, only smaller. That's the same thing with humans too. Sure, we grow hair and we get freckles, and of course we get bigger and taller and stronger, but human babies don't go through a full metamorphosis. They look like a human when they're born. They look like a human when they're a child. They look like a human when they're an adolescent or a teenager. And they look like a human when they're a full-grown adult. So, animal life cycles. There's always different stages. Sometimes the baby animal does look like the adult. Sometimes the baby animal does not look like the adult. That's something that's important to know about life cycles. Another thing that we want to know about life cycles is every living thing goes through a life cycle. And that's just the process of growing and changing that every single living thing goes through. We even go through them. As I mentioned in my last example, the stages of our life cycle, we go from being a baby to being a child to being a teenager to finally being a full-grown adult. And we can do different things at each of those stages in our lives. A baby can't really talk very much. A child learns how to talk, but a teenager, and finally when you're an adult, you should know how to talk very well. Animals also can do different things as they go throughout their life cycle. A great example of this is a butterfly. When it's in its second life cycle stage, when it's this little larva that looks like a caterpillar, can it fly? No, it can't fly. It can fly when it becomes a full-grown butterfly, but not before that. So life cycles. Why are they important? Well, in an animal's life cycle, we know that they always start as an egg, right? A butterfly starts as an egg, a frog starts as an egg. You'll study a spider, it starts in an egg. Even mammals begin with an egg. It's the very first cell of a mammal. However, as an animal moves from being an egg to its next stage, to its next stage, to its final stage, what can an adult animal do that a young animal cannot do? It can have babies. It can reproduce and have more offspring. And that's why a life cycle is so very important, because as animals go through their life cycle, first they start young, they get older and older and older. Finally, when they're older, when they're the adult of their species, they can have babies of their own. And the species can continue to grow and can continue to reproduce. And animals, all animals do this at like a different pace. We call that an animal's lifespan. So some animals go through their full life cycle in under a year. So for example, most bugs are hatched from their eggs, they develop through their stages and become an adult, and then they die within about a year, which is crazy. There are some other animals, which you will read about in your book, that take more than 1 year to go through their life cycle. For example, rabbits live for about 10 years. Deer live for about 20 years. It takes them 20 years to go through their full life cycle. A bear can live to almost 40 years, and an elephant can live to be about 75 years old. So they go through their life cycle through the process of 75 years. And that's pretty similar to what humans do as well. We spend a few years as a baby, quite a few years as a child, a few years as a teenager, but then at the end of our life cycle, the last stage as an adult, we spend quite a bit of time there, which is awesome. As animals go through their life cycles, they need different things at different stages. And I kind of touched on this when I talked about the caterpillar and the butterfly. A caterpillar needs to eat a lot of food, like leaves. If you've ever read the book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle, that's not exactly how caterpillars eat food. I think in the book that caterpillar eats like a salami and watermelon and cheese and all kinds of fruits. Caterpillars normally just eat leaves and grass and plants. But a caterpillar needs lots of leaves and grass and plants to grow its body up so it can be in its chrysalis, so it can finally become a butterfly. Now, a butterfly has very different needs from a caterpillar. A butterfly doesn't need leaves, it doesn't need grass to eat. What does a butterfly need? A butterfly needs flowers. Right, it needs flowers so it can drink the nectar and it can transport the pollen to different flowers. So that's just one example of how, as animals go through their life cycle, they need different things. Friends, I can't wait for you to keep reading this chapter. I can't wait for you to learn even more about life cycles. If you have questions with this, please have your adult email me. I would be very happy to answer them. Keep working hard. Go Dolphins.